Our program today is an introduction to working together to resolve conflict. My name is Jim Coles, and I'm the Executive Director of Columbus Area Labor Management Committee.
And I'm Meredith Porterfield, Program Manager for Columbus Area Labor Management Committee.
Our goal today is to look at two types of conflict, interpersonal conflict and systemic conflict, as well as to discuss some ways that conflict can be effectively resolved. This program is the first in our series on conflict resolution. Not all conflict is the same. Some of it may have very minimal impact on us, while other times it hits us very hard. How we react to it and how we deal with that is very much different depending on the specifics of the conflict. But remember that not all conflict is bad. When we work with organizations and we observe absolutely no conflict, it tells us nobody cares, or nobody is interested in working hard enough to resolve the problems that are present in that organization, and that's a bad thing. The key to any type of conflict is how well do we effectively address that conflict at its source and how do we resolve it. And the two types of conflict we're looking at today are interpersonal conflict between individuals or within a group and systemic conflict. Interpersonal conflict can arise from a variety of sources. It can be simple miscommunications within the organization. It can be misunderstandings between members and what their intent is. It can result from a lack of common goals or plans if people within a team have an idea of one direction they want to move, but the rest of the team has a different direction. Conflict will result. Unrealistic expectations can result in conflict because people will feel undermined when their particular expectations aren't achieved. Unintended consequences, if you've ever been part of a group that solved a problem only to create more problems as a result, those are the unintended consequences that will produce additional conflict, as well as exaggerated personal differences between individuals on the team. Nearly all conflict can be prevented or successfully resolved if it's addressed at the right time, and that's usually as soon as possible after the conflict has occurred, by the right people who are in a position to be able to resolve the conflict, and in the right ways. One thing we want to remember is we don't want to embarrass the people who are involved in the conflict. Doing so will just cause them to dig in deeper and make the conflict worse. Systemic conflict is much more difficult to resolve because it results from problems within the work system. Systemic conflicts generally go deeper and are more complex and therefore more difficult to resolve than interpersonal conflict. The overall inertia of the system and its unwillingness to change can hinder us from resolving systemic conflict. After all, if something goes wrong, it's easier to blame the people than to try to fix the system. Even though, as Deming said, 97% of what goes wrong is the fault of the system, fixing that system takes a lot of work. Systemic conflict, resolving that conflict requires the analysis of the work system, as well as a willingness on the part of everyone to change the system. The issues that are raised are complex, require deeper analysis. The solutions are a lot harder to come to and much more far-reaching than conflict between individuals. And it's undermined by the difficulty that's always present when we try to create systemic change. Systemic conflict is essential to organizational learning and growth. It can help us to identify and correct weaknesses and instabilities within the system. It provides an opportunity for us to improve the system, make positive change within the system to allow it to move forward. Systemic conflict also exposes problems within our organization, such as contradictory cultural messages that may be sent, the absence of a clear vision within our organizations that everyone understands and is committed to accomplishing, as well as the need for shared values, committed leadership in all parts of our organization, collaboration, and teamwork. Collaboration and teamwork are really the keys to correcting systemic conflict. Systemic conflict is also common in bureaucratic organizations. And if you've ever been at work and heard the words, "That's how we've always done it," you've heard one of the reasons why people don't like to correct systemic conflict. Systemic conflict can also be caused by competition between departments, offices, and other silos. When one part of an organization attempts to get stronger by weakening the other parts of the organization, systemic conflict can clearly result. Systemic conflict also occurs when individuals lose sight that they're all independent parts of a single organizational whole. Each has multiple goals in common, and people frequently lose track of what their role is in helping to accomplish the goals of the system. As you deal with systemic conflict, remember, don't settle for quick and easy answers. Dig deeper, find the root causes, and then you'll have the opportunity to help resolve systemic conflict.
For some people, the best way to deal with conflict is not to. Their idea is if we leave it alone, it will go away by itself. Sometimes that may be true, but for the most part, the problem doesn't go away. In fact, the situation gets worse and can continue to get worse. The other thing is there is no opportunity to make any type of change so that it doesn't happen again, or an opportunity to look at the system for any possible errors or defects. Another approach to resolve conflict is by using power to coerce somebody to change or give in. The result with this approach is people are put on the defensive and can either push back, which can increase the level of conflict, or walk away angry, which does nothing to remedy the situation. The other problem with this type of resolution is somebody wins and somebody loses. And I don't know about you, but I'm not overly fond of losing. People get locked into positions under this approach, and once you get locked into a position, there is very little that can be resolved in a way both sides can win. Another way we resolve conflict is by competition. Who can outdo the other side? We treat conflict resolution as a game, with each side coming back at the other without truly addressing the problem or the issue. It's all about me looking good. The third approach is by fairness and rights, and these involve laws and contracts. The problem with this approach is it's not everything is black and white. There can be lots of ambiguity, especially with contracts and labor agreements. The other issue with this type of resolution is, if you look at the last bulleted item, it often requires the use of a third party, such as courts or arbitrators, to decide. The problem with this is it doesn't provide a resolution that makes everybody happy, nor does it provide a resolution. If we focus on the interests of the parties in dispute, and interests are our needs, our desires, our concerns, and our fears, we have a much better opportunity of resolving the conflict and having an outcome that will be appealing to the parties involved. By focusing on interests, we can eliminate the time-consuming nature of the traditional conflict resolution methods we talked about earlier through avoidance, power, or rights, and without any resolution to the particular problem that we worked on. The only problem as far as resolving through interest is that it's not always easy, simply because you have to reveal your true feelings and thoughts, which for some people that can be very uncomfortable. And you also have to be honest, and that too can be very uncomfortable. You have to be willing to provide and share information, but it can also help to build trust and build that relationship which is really important as far as resolving conflict. This process doesn't find blame, but it's more objective. And it's also important that the first few times that you try this process, that you get somebody to help you with it, because it's so contrary to the way we normally deal with problems or with conflict resolution. That's the end of our slideshow for today. Keep watching for future programs dealing with conflict resolution as we look at other ways to resolve it. For more information or assistance with resolving conflict, contact Columbus Area Labor Management Committee at calmc.org. Thanks for participating.